Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live, everybody. Hey, I'm Morris Lilienthal. All right, so today's show involves two topics that I'm super passionate about and super enthused and always jacked up to talk to somebody about, and that is athletics and young people. So I'm really excited to talk about the combination of those things today with our guest, Taylor Edge. Taylor and I are going to be discussing about the pressures and things that young people face in today's society and young athletes face, and how Taylor, as a character coach that it works with a lot of sports programs and young athletes, how he works to set them up for success on and off the court. And so that's really what our discussion is going to be about today. So let me, without further ado, officially introduce our guest. Our guest today is Taylor Edge. Taylor is a graduate of Jacksonville State University. He was on the Jacksonville State baseball team. So Taylor, I know you're pumped up because if I'm not mistaken, JSU had the best baseball season they've ever had this year. I saw them make a deep run in the playoffs in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And Taylor also has his own consulting business, Edge Gainer Consulting, where he advises companies on ways they can become more efficient and effective in the way they operate. And how I met Taylor is he is the character coach for the men's University of Alabama Huntsville, as we call it here, UAH basketball program. And my understanding he's going to be the character coach not only next year for the men's team, but for the women's team. And he's also a recent author of a book called More Than a Believer. Taylor, thank you so much for taking time today. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mo, for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you and to share about these two topics that you said you're passionate about, and I'm as passionate about it myself.
Yeah, all right. So, folks, just a quick tech part up front. I'm having some internet connectivity issues here at the office. So if there's some blurring or buffering, I have not been drinking. That is just the computer buffering me. We're doing our best to work through it. That is something that is out of my tech control. But, folks, if you're watching today and you're watching the live program and you've got questions for Taylor, or you want to say hello or give a shout out and let us know you're watching, please do so. If you are now sitting here watching the recorded version and you've got questions for Taylor or comments or want to get feedback or something, we'll monitor the comments after the show. So just go ahead and put the question down there and we'll try to get back to you. I guess, Taylor, when I got to following the program and then meeting you last year and doing, I guess a question that I think a lot of our viewers would have, an audience would have, is you kind of tell us what is a character coach, and talk to us a little bit about how you're involved with the program and how your involvement with the players work.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that is a term that I get questioned about a lot. Okay,
Sure.
What is a character coach? And the simplest way I like to explain it is if it happens outside the rectangle, I get involved. With Coach Acuff last year and now Coach Schulman this year, I'm no expert, not even a novice on college basketball, but I do know a little bit about people. And so as it comes to working with the guys and the coaches, I help them talk through things. I walk through them. I guess the main word that I would use as a character coach is I'm just there to serve. I'm just there to serve them and walk with them through ups and downs and sideways and just build relationships. And when I have the opportunity, maybe share a little bit of wisdom on character topics and things that I've learned in my life to help them maybe navigate their world and navigate their college experience and maybe even their coaching experience.
Yeah, and I think especially when you start getting into the level of, for those of you who follow me on social have seen, I've had some of the players on before and see some of my social media posts. UAH is a very top tier level Division II basketball program, men's and women's. And so, from that perspective, it's very competitive. And not only that on the court, but the school in and of itself is very competitive academically. So these players have a lot of stresses and pressures on them just from an academic and athletic standpoint. But then they have everyday stresses of life, family issues that come up, injuries, other things that can affect them. And so, what I understood from kind of talking to you ahead of today's show, Taylor, is that you really try to be a sounding board for them, somebody that they can lean on if they just need to talk or they want advice, somebody that they might feel more comfortable talking to you than maybe their coach, who they're concerned wouldn't want to hear those kinds of things and want them to be more focused, or at least they perceive they want them to be more focused on getting ready for the next game.
Right. I think my personal mission statement is to make a positive impact on the lives of young people. And what I felt back in 2013 was the crux of all of that is, and I looked at it in my own life, is that these guys and gals are going through a lot of things, and they're just exist. And I think if we all looked inside, we would acknowledge this, that there is just this barrier between what I call us or young people and authority. That authority may be a parent, that authority may be a head coach, that authority may even be a senior pastor. It's kind of interesting to think about that. But for whatever reason, that barrier exists sometimes. And sometimes with a parent, it is because the kid's messed up and they don't want to get in trouble. But it might be, and where I find this in athletics is maybe a young athlete has made a personal mistake, and the last thing they want to do is disappoint their coach. And so the last person that they're going to go to, unfortunately, would be them, because they don't want to disappoint them. But the fact of the matter is something has happened and they need advice. And so what I felt that God's called me to, the way that my purpose and what my way to make a difference in this world is to be that guy that stands in the gap. Just like you said, that trusted advisor, that ear, that person, that trusted adult that's not going to judge them, that's going to listen, that may be able to provide some guidance and maybe some next steps so they can approach that mom or that dad or that coach or that senior pastor, if the case may be. Or it might even be a boss at work, that you don't want to disappoint them. And so I just think it is an awesome opportunity. I don't control any of their playing time, so they can come talk to me about it. I'm not going to ground them, so they can come talk to me. And really, Mo, I've found that the young people that I've worked with have really appreciated and they've really responded to it. And as much as they say that I've helped them, it is such an encouragement to me that I've been able to do that and that I've been able to make a positive impact on their lives. And then when I do that, that's when I'm accomplishing my mission. So, I see it as a total win-win.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, real quick, I want to thank Don McClure out in Houston, Texas, and Will Alexander, all the folks for joining us. Hey, Taylor, I think a lot of people, when, if you're a fan, whether you're a fan of Alabama or Auburn football, you're a fan of, the Vanderbilt baseball team that's, hopefully going to pull off a championship for the SEC. I think a lot of people lose perspective as to how much stress and how much is involved for these student athletes. Yes. And it's you being a former student athlete and me as well, that is something that there is so much required of them that when anything else goes on in their life, it just feels like the weight of the world can be coming down on them and other things. And it's just tough enough being a 19 or 20-year-old student, and with life going on and maybe trying to work a part-time job to make money to pay your bills. But when you've got, hey, now I can't make it to class for 2 days because we're going to be traveling to Delta State to play this tour up to Memphis and do all these kinds of things. Then how do I feel with this? And then, oh gosh, I just had a fight with my girlfriend or boyfriend yesterday and having all those things going on. To me, not having had this, when I was, playing college football, having somebody that I trusted and felt comfortable with it, certainly there's got to be a level of comfort and trust. I know that's something you work to build that so they feel comfortable coming to you. Right. But that is big for those kids because it really helps them the most importantly with their life and keep things in perspective and do. But hey, if you're the coach, hey man, if their mind's not clear, they're probably not playing the best game they can play either.
Right. We even experienced it last year. UAH is, like as you mentioned, Mo, is a very competitive school. It's tough. It is a very tough school, and we've got guys that are in their second, third, fourth year starting to get into their major, and it's big boy stuff. And the classes the subject matter is difficult. And the other thing about these athletes is, as you and I can identify, they're athletes, so they want to be their best, right? So they've been recruited to come and play the basketball, for example, at UAH, and they want to do everything they can. And sometimes they may see that class is getting in the way. We wouldn't want to say that, but they feel that way. And then again, we have to talk about the perspective of, the basketball is going to quit bouncing one day. And classes that are important, and relationships and being a great teammate's important, and girlfriends and boyfriends and relationships are important. So I do spend a lot of time trying to talk about perspective with these guys, and that, being your best on the court, but then, when you leave the court, let's be the best in the classroom. When you leave the classroom, let's be the best for, if you're in a committed relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, be that listening ear, be that friend to them. And so I spend a good amount of time talking about perspective of being your best, but sometimes you gotta, when you leave the court, you gotta leave the court. You gotta be a friend, or you gotta be a student. In the same way, when you leave, and the other thing, it goes the other way. When you leave the classroom, I know you got that test tonight, but hey, for the next 2.5 hours, I need you to leave that on the sidelines, and I need you to be totally focused on being your best on the court. And so
Right.
you want to talk about a little bit sometimes about compartmentalizing it, and it's not that in a negative way, but it's really teaching them how to focus and be committed, because that's the way life is, right? You're a dad, you're a son, you're a partner in a law firm. I mean, you've got a lot of different hats, and especially when you go home, you need to be dad, you need to not be lawyer. And so these are types of skills and things that I try to talk with them that they think just applies to them in school, but it applies to them the rest of their life.
There's no doubt about that. And, one of my most favorite Mo shows that I had, Taylor, was with four other guests of mine that all played SEC football and are now lawyers. And we talked about the lessons that college athletics taught them that made them a success in their legal career. And the things that you're trying to instill in these young men and young women are characteristics that are going to apply across the board to make them successful, hopefully on the court, but more importantly, off the court as they get older, and to become great business people, or great employees, and great leaders, and great family people. One of the things I think that you mentioned yesterday that you were just touching on there, I'd like to dive in a little more, and that's the perspective. And because I think so often in life, and I think at a young age, it's so hard to see this, that you have a tendency to look at it more glass half empty than glass full. And whether that is, hey, we've got a road trip coming up and I've got an exam, how am I going to get all this done and studied with that? Or whether that is, hey, I tweaked my hamstring and we've got the big game coming up and now I'm going to be out for so many weeks, or hey, we've got a new group of freshmen coming in and this guy or gal is going to come in and take my spot. What's my new role going to be? Or in case of UAH, hey, we love our head coach and now he's gone. Right. So I think teaching them about, I think your words to me were opportunity versus obstacle. Yes. And teaching them how to look at that. I'd love for you to expand on that just a little bit, and why that's so important for them to grow and learn as young athletes and as young people.
Yeah, I would love to. And you just said two words that I identify, and they almost get tired of me saying it. One of the things when I talk about perspective is, with any of those things, those obstacles that I see as opportunities, or whenever they're presented with challenges, what I teach our guys, and I teach every young person that I'm involved with, is that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And that is the perspective that, if you will take that perspective, it changes things. It changes your whole life. It changes how you see everything, that everything is in your best interest and an opportunity to learn and grow. And you can imagine, if you take on that perspective that everything that happens to me is an opportunity to learn and grow, then you're always going to be better. Whether you tweak your hamstring, or you're trying to learn how to balance that hard test you've got, and you've got workouts at 6:30 in the morning, rather than saying, why is this happening to me? This is hard. I don't know. What I try to tell them is, hey, what an opportunity for you to learn work-life balance. What an opportunity you can to show some commitment by waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, you tweak that hamstring. Well, many times they say, well, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And I talk to them, I say, why not? Why not you? Maybe this is an opportunity for you to kind of sit down, and maybe you need to study film. So maybe you don't need to be out there on the court trying to perfect your jump shot. Maybe you need to sit in the film room and kind of analyze some of the things that you've been doing. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to watch one of your teammates, and maybe it's an opportunity for you to be a coach rather than a player out there. I said, so if you will change your perspective, and what I say a lot of times, you use it, don't let it use you. Mm. And then if you look at it that way, it's amazing. You never lose, because everything is always working for your good. So, I sometimes they'll say, well, Coach, I don't see how me breaking up with my girlfriend's a very good thing. I don't know how that's in my best interest. And we've had some conversations about that.
Yeah.
But I've had a conversation. I said, you know what? Maybe it's an opportunity for you to look at yourself in the mirror.
Right.
Maybe this relationship is setting you up for the girl that you're eventually going to marry, and some changes that you're going to look at, some perspective and some ways you're going to see yourself, and maybe make some changes in the way that you look at yourself or look at others is the exact thing you need so you can be the greatest husband and dad in the future. I said, so don't look at it like this is happening to you. This is happening for you. So when you
Yeah.
say perspective, those are the thoughts that come to my mind.
Yeah, I agree totally, Taylor. Real quick, I want to say hello to Heath Simpson. Heath just said this is great. Heath is a friend of mine from back home in Pickens County. Was a good basketball player, and he for several years was a men's basketball coach, a high school basketball coach as well. So I think he is totally associating with what you're talking about in building up young people and setting them up for success. But it's tough when heck, it's tough at 42 years old to have that perspective. But at 18 to 22 years old, as well as I do that's tough. But if you learn it at an early age, it will have a dramatic impact on the way you view everything in your life.
Yes.
Period. End of story. And I think a lot of the discipline and hard work and adversity that I learned playing college athletics and high school athletics really set me up for the opportunity to have success as a businessman and as a lawyer and as a father and as a husband. And I think some of the stresses and anxiety and struggles that I went through in looking at the way you're talking about, trying to as best I could, help you. And it's so exciting to hear that you're doing that for the folks out at UAH. And I know that the kids out there benefit because, I've had the pleasure of interacting with a lot of those student athletes, and they are top notch, as well as I do, but they are.
But I think that's so interesting. Those guys and gals out there at UAH, they're awesome. They're so high character. But I think what people don't need to lose sight of, and what you've already said, is they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. They're learning life just like we had to learn life. And so
Right.
they have extremely high character, but that doesn't mean they don't have troubles and they don't have
Right.
trials and things. And so, I can imagine, I'm learning this too in my 40s. I'm a little bit older than you, but, I just think back, man, maybe how many of these concepts would I have grabbed onto and run with at 18, 19, 20? I don't know. But I don't want to leave that to chance by not sharing it with these guys and gals and see what it could do for them.
Yeah, we're just given an opportunity and the perspective and because then if they can latch onto it and have a sounding board and hear, because if you pause for a minute and you think, wait a minute, this does kind of stink, but let me see how I can swing this in another direction to make something positive out of this. Maybe I can't do this certain thing right now, but maybe I can look at it from this angle to better myself for the long run.
Yeah.
Folks, if you're just joining us, our guest on the Mo Show Live today is Taylor Edge. Taylor is speaker, author, and he is the character coach out at the University of Alabama Huntsville for the men's team and going to be the character coach for the women's team this year. And we're talking about how he works with young athletes to set them up for success on and off the court. Taylor, I'd love to talk to you about something else that I'm passionate about and do that you and I had a little bit of a conversation in prep for today's show, and that is about youth athletics. That, that a lot of these players that you're working with now, to get to the level of playing top 25 Division II basketball, we're probably playing a lot of basketball as a younger athlete. And now it seems like when I talk to my contemporaries that have kids Wyatt's age, they're all doing travel ball baseball or they're doing AAU basketball, and it seems like it's almost a full-time sport like the NBA or big-time programs. So I would be interested to kind of get your perspective on that and how you think parents like myself of kids who are 8 to 12 years old, how do you think we should manage youth sports for our children? What's a healthy balance, and how should we push them? And sometimes do you think we push them too much?
Yeah. No, I love it too. And I'm on social media a lot too. And I see both sides of people bashing travel ball, and then I see people that just promote it like crazy. And I lived it. I've got a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, and we've done the travel thing, and we've also not done the travel thing. And I guess as it relates to me, and now that I've got an experience with a 17-year-old, he'll be a senior at Bob Jones, and went through the rec, and then was a borderline player, and we chose not to let him play travel ball, and then he got a little bit better, or maybe he wanted to do that just because everybody else was doing it. Let's acknowledge that exists, and then we let him do that. But I think the key is that we responded to him. Now, I don't want to be too naive and say that there wasn't a little bit of baseball player in me that wanted my son to play and be a college baseball player one day, or a pro or whatever. So maybe there was some why don't you play to get better? But what I've learned is, and what I've now learned with my 14-year-old is, you got to cultivate what they love. I shared with you that they went back. He plays at Bob Jones. They went back to school, I think, January 4th of this year, and they started practicing. Of course, they'd been practicing in the fall too, but January 4th it was on. It was full time,
right.
6 days a week, and they were blessed to be able to make it to the state championship, and it was just awesome, and it was great. Unfortunately, they lost that in Game 3 in a heartbreaker. But then that was on a Saturday afternoon, and then the next Friday was his first travel game in Meridian, Mississippi. So literally it just ended Saturday, and so no joke, for 6 months he's been playing baseball. And I can maybe the folks that watch this or live or watch it in the future go, oh, that's crazy. Kids need a rest, and and I agree. I totally agree, but he loves it. That's what he wanted to do. It wasn't me going, all right, man, you got to do this. Hey, this is going on. You push. There's a push when they get tired, but you really know what their dreams are. So I think the word we used the other day is, you got to cultivate their dream. I've got a 14-year-old that doesn't want to play travel ball, and he wants to play rec basketball, and he wants to play piano, and that's fantastic. So we bought him a piano the other day because that's what he loves, and so. I think really where we need to start looking in the mirror about the pressures of all of that is us as parents. Are we doing it for us, or are we doing it for them? Now, obviously, there's a point where you've got to push them, as you just said. I don't feel like going to practice today. Well, hey, you made a commitment to the team. I'll never forget that. I was 11 years old, and I was playing baseball. Rec baseball in Gadsden, Alabama, and one of my best friends in 5th grade was Chad Johnson. And Chad called me. He didn't play baseball. He called me and said, Taylor, you want to go to the beach with me? And I'm like, man, Chad Johnson was the coolest kid in school. You darn right. I want to go to Panama City. I want to go to the beach with Chad Johnson. I mean, I want to be the coolest guy in the world, So I call my dad. I say, hey, Dad, Chad Johnson has asked me to go to the beach with him next week. And he goes, oh, really? He said, don't you have a game next week? I went, well, yeah, but, I do. But, this is Chad Johnson, and this is Panama City, and my dad said, son, you made a commitment to that team. You're going to stick with that. And I cried, this is Chad Johnson, Dad, you don't understand. But he said, you made a commitment to that team. And I will never forget that phone call. I'm in the kitchen with, the curly cord around the corner crying, but my dad taught me about commitment, and he wasn't pushing me to play. I mean, my dad was an All-American in college. He was drafted, and I'm sure he loved it, but he was trying to teach me about commitment. He wasn't trying to push me to play baseball. And so when it comes to pushing our kids, I think we're not pushing them. I think we're trying to instill values that will stick with them even when they're 46 years old. But I think looking in the mirror about, let's cultivate what they love. If they love it, man, get in the car, drive to Atlanta, drive to Nashville. If they play travel basketball, whatever it is. If they love it, man, I tell my son, I'm there for you. But if you don't, man, if you want to play rec basketball and you want me to be assistant coach at Palmer and Dublin, I'll do that too. But it's all, I think it's all about keeping the focus on them and taking the focus off ourselves.
I agree 100%, and I think it is about making it about them and keeping the focus. And I think the other thing that I've seen in the couple of years of being out there is, and I struggle with it too, just to be transparent about it, which is being positive and not focusing on the mistakes that your child might make when they're doing this, instead of saying, hey, Billy, hey, Sarah, you need to really do this or do that. Not to say that you can't help them and work with them on that, but to maybe start with, hey, great job with this. I know you've been working on this today in today's game or today's practice. I really could tell that you did this well.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
and to encourage them and build them up before you try to tear them down, because I think we've all been to the youth athletics at this age, and you hear a lot of, oh my God, I can't believe you did this, or oh my gosh, get down on the ball. It's kind of a lot of tearing down sometimes as opposed to building up quite as much and doing. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, and in fact, I want to make one little comment about that too. And and I want to tell this to myself. I can see myself, so I'm going to tell myself, and I'm going to tell you, and whoever else is out there watching. Make sure that when you are giving the criticism or you're giving the correction, make sure it's for the kid's good rather than not your embarrassment. Because I will be the first one. Sometimes I've yelled at my kid for striking out, or I may have said, watch the ball, blah blah blah. But you know what? My outburst came because I was taking it as personal embarrassment that my kid did that, and I'm sorry for that. But
Yeah.
I just want to bring that up because I think that is half or more of the outbursts I think that happen at youth games is the parents feel embarrassed by the kid. I mean, that's kind of harsh to say, but if we'll all look in the mirror, there's some of that. So rather than, if you're going to correct them, correct them out of the right spirit, correct them out of, again, focus on them, not about you. It's not about you being embarrassed because they struck out. What are the other parents thinking? Oh, why is this kid on my team? He's not any good. That's what goes on. That's what's going through the minds, and you got to block that stuff out, and you got to know it's all about them. And how can I, like you said, encourage them, build them up to make them better, not try to do self-preservation as a parent.
Great point. I really like that. I think that is so true. Taylor, I want to be mindful of your time and respectful of your time today. Again, folks, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Most Live. Our guest today is Taylor Edge. He's an author, speaker, and he is the character coach for the men's and women's basketball programs out at the University of Alabama Huntsville, as we affectionately call UAH. And we've been talking about how he works with athletes and sets them up for success on and off the court. And now we've recently been talking about the world I've been living in baseball and stuff right now, which I'm loving, and Wyatt's enjoying it immensely. But how to make sure that when your kids are getting very involved in youth sports, that it's more about them and it's something they enjoy and it's their passion about it. And if they are, then go all out for it. But make sure it's something that they're enjoying and encourage them along the way instead of tearing them down. Taylor, I'd like to finish up, and I'd love for you to. I know you're proud of the recent book that you recently published, and I've heard some great things about it. If you would take just a minute and tell our audience a little bit about your book and how they can get it and find it online, or where they can purchase it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I got a copy of it. So it is. It's called More Than a Believer. I published it in early January of this year, and it's my journey. What I've recently started talking about, that it's a leadership book. So if you're looking for a leadership book, it's a leadership book, but it's maybe a little bit different than you think. This is all about self-leadership and how the life that I lived in high school and college, possibly wearing the T-shirt that says I was a believer in Jesus, but my life reflecting something totally different. And that a situation that happened with infertility with my wife and I that really changed. You want to talk about perspective? It changed my whole perspective. And then I wrote about the next 18 years and the process that I went to really transform my life. And so I think that for any of us, we're all leadership. I think was it John Maxwell said that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I believe that the most important person you can lead and you have to lead is yourself. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. And so really this book is my journey on how I've learned to lead myself and the identity that I have now, and that it's not about fame and fortune and likes and followers and all that kind of good stuff, that my identity is based on the one that created me, and that when you live out of that, just what the world can be. I'm living a dream right now. People always say, I'm living the dream. I'm living the dream. I mean, it's no joke. I felt called to make a positive impact on the lives of young people. And by transforming my life and learning how to lead myself, I'm living my dream. And so I encourage you can grab it on Amazon. Also, morethanabeliever.com is my website, and you can read a summary of the book, and you can actually order a copy there. I'm selling signed copies, so if you order it through there, or you can order the Kindle version or the paperback version on Amazon, and I'd love for people to read it and throw a review on there. Be honest, good, bad, ugly. I'm a big boy, I can take it, but yeah, I've gotten a lot of good comments on it, and I think it can really help people.
That's awesome, Taylor. Congratulations on doing that. And folks, what I'm going to do is when we get done with our interview here, I'll put a link to below here on the video to the book, where your website, where people can get a hold of it. And then I'm also going to tag Taylor and put him on social media on here if you want to kind of connect with him. Taylor, if people want to get you, if they're looking maybe to have you come speak to any youth groups or sports groups or teams, is that something that you do, or you got resources for that?
100%. I would love it. That's another way that I live out my calling, is to share my message with athletes and other young people and church groups, youth groups. And so I would love people to follow me on social media. TEdge73. I know you've been tagging it in the social. Also, Edge Gainer. That's another organization as Edge Gainer Consulting, but you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook there, and on Twitter. Also, Taylor Edge. Just search for that, TEdge73. And you can find me More Than a Believer. I've got my cell phone number, my email address. Everything is on that website. It would be an honor to share with your audience. And, you said you had somebody in Houston, Texas. I'd love it. I'd be there. I'd be there. Yeah. So it's not just a local thing.
Well, folks, we'll put all those links and things below to the website, and we'll tag all the appropriate social media channels. And Taylor is a great follow on social. It's somebody that I've gotten to follow you over the last several months. I see a lot of the videos that you're doing that inspire me, that keep me focused and keeping me in a positive mindset and perspective. I think that is a lesson that it's ever evolving and learning, and I think sometimes we can fall back on that. So I think it's great to hear that perspective from other people and keeping things in mind. Taylor, thanks so much for today's interview. It's been great. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really appreciate what you're doing for our youth and working with them to make them good role models and leaders for the future.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so thankful to be on your show, and anything I can do for you and any way I can serve you and Wyatt and your wife, you just call me anytime.
Thanks so much, folks. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked and enjoyed what you saw, if you will, please like and share it out so we can get the message out about all the great things that Taylor's doing and the things that are out there for our young athletes. Thanks so much, everybody.